Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. In today's episode, we're going to dive into a topic that many people ask about. How can you understand English even if you're not actively speaking it? This is something a lot of language learners struggle with, and we're here to break it down. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to improve your English comprehension, and the best part, without necessarily needing to speak.
Exactly, Sarah. We all know that speaking is one part of language learning. But there's so much more to understanding a language. Whether you're learning English for work, travel, or just for fun, understanding what you hear and read is so important. And the best part is, you don't have to speak English fluently to improve your comprehension. So let's talk about some of the best ways to do that.
Let's start with listening. We often hear that listening is one of the most important skills to develop when learning a new language, but how do you actually use listening to improve understanding? The simple answer is practice. By consistently listening to native English speakers, your brain starts to naturally pick up patterns, phrases, and vocabulary. Even if you don't understand every word, you can still get the general meaning.
Right, and listening actively is key. For example, when you watch movies or listen to podcasts, try to focus on the rhythm, tone, and pronunciation of the words. Even if you can't catch every single word, paying attention to the context and how the speakers are expressing themselves will give you a lot of information.
Exactly. And think about it this way. You don't need to understand every word to get the main idea of what's being said. For example, if you're listening to a conversation in English and someone says, "We're meeting at 6 p.m. at the coffee shop," you don't need to understand every single word to know that they're planning to meet up at a certain time and place. The key is focusing on the bigger picture.
Now let's talk about context clues. Context is a powerful tool for understanding meaning. When you're listening to or reading English, there are often clues in the sentence or situation that help you figure out what a word means, even if you don't know it. For instance, let's say you're listening to a conversation and you hear someone say, "I have to go to the store to buy some groceries." You might not know what groceries means, but the context tells you that they're talking about shopping for food.
Exactly. And it's not just about words. Nonverbal communication, like body language, facial expressions, and even tone of voice, can tell you a lot about what someone is trying to communicate. Think about it. When you're in a conversation with someone, you're not just listening to their words, you're also observing their gestures, their posture, their facial expressions. These things can help you understand the conversation without even needing to speak.
Right? So let's say you're watching a video and the speaker's tone is very enthusiastic. Even if you don't catch every word, the energy and excitement in their voice will give you clues about what they're talking about.
Let's switch gears a bit and talk about reading. Reading is another excellent way to understand English, even if you're not speaking. When you read in English, especially materials that are suited to your level, you can slowly build your vocabulary and comprehension skills. The more you read, the more words and phrases will become familiar to you, which helps you understand English in different situations.
That's true, and the great thing about reading is that you can go at your own pace. You can read a sentence, pause, and think about it, which is harder to do in a fast-paced conversation. You can also highlight words you don't know and look them up later. Over time, you'll see the same words and phrases pop up in different contexts, which will help you understand their meaning.
All right, let's dive into something many people overlook. Watching TV shows, movies, and even YouTube videos in English. It's one of the most effective ways to improve your understanding of the language without actually speaking it. The key here is immersion. When you surround yourself with English, you naturally start to pick up on things like pronunciation, intonation, and even cultural references, which helps you understand what's going on even if you're not speaking yourself.
Definitely. And you don't even need to start with complex films or TV shows. Start simple. For example, children's cartoons are fantastic for language learners. They usually have clear pronunciation, simple sentence structures, and visual context that help you understand the story even if you don't know every word.
And then, as you get more comfortable, you can move on to more complex content like dramas, news reports, or documentaries. And this is where the real magic happens. Because watching these types of shows, you start to notice how language is used in different situations. For example, the way someone speaks in a formal news broadcast will be different from the casual tone in a comedy show. These differences teach you how English varies based on context.
And if you really want to challenge yourself, try watching without subtitles. I know it sounds intimidating, but over time, it will force your brain to work harder at understanding the context. At first, you might catch only the main idea, but eventually, you'll start picking up more and more details. And if you're not ready for no subtitles, start with English subtitles. They can be a huge help in connecting what you hear with the written word.
Exactly, and it's not just about listening to what people say. The visual cues like body language, facial expressions, and the setting add so much to the meaning. So, for example, if someone's talking in a very calm, serious way, but their hands are shaking, that's a big clue that something's not right, even if you don't understand the exact words.
Now, let's talk about real-life interactions. You might think that understanding a language means you need to be in a conversation where you're speaking, but that's not always the case. You can understand a lot just by observing and listening to others. Think about being in a room with people speaking English. Even if you're not saying anything yourself, there's a lot you can learn just by being around the conversation.
That's so true. Like, let's say you're at a party or a work meeting where everyone is speaking English. You might not be actively speaking, but you can still learn by watching how people react to certain situations, how they phrase their sentences, and how their emotions come through in their speech. The more you observe, the more you start to understand the nuances of the language.
Right, and as you engage more with people, you'll also start to understand how emotions are conveyed through language. The way someone says something can tell you a lot about their feelings. For instance, if someone says, "I'm fine," but they say it in a flat tone, you can usually tell they're not actually feeling fine. These nonverbal cues are essential to understanding conversations, especially when you're not speaking yourself.
So, you're probably wondering, how do you keep improving your understanding of English over time? The truth is, there are several techniques you can use to make steady progress, even without speaking much. It's all about creating a routine that gradually builds your skills and keeps you immersed in the language.
Exactly, Sarah. One of the simplest ways to do this is by surrounding yourself with English every day. You don't have to speak constantly to improve your comprehension. Even just listening to English for 30 minutes a day can make a huge difference. This could be through music, podcasts, audiobooks, or even just reading news articles. The key is consistency. You could even do it passively, like playing English music in the background while you're working or doing chores.
That's a good point. And it's not just about the time you spend listening. It's also about how you engage with the content. Try to choose material that's interesting to you. If you're passionate about a certain topic, like science, history, or cooking, look for podcasts or audiobooks related to that topic. When the content interests you, it won't feel like a chore to listen to it, and you'll naturally pick up more words and phrases.
Yes, and another great way to improve is by keeping a journal. But I'm not talking about writing long, complicated paragraphs every day. Instead, make it a habit to jot down new words or phrases that you hear throughout the day, whether it's from a podcast, a YouTube video, or even from conversations. When you write down new vocabulary, you're reinforcing it in your memory. Later, you can look up any words you didn't understand and see how they're used in different contexts.
And it's a great way to track your progress. Over time, you'll notice that you have a bigger vocabulary and a deeper understanding of how words and phrases fit into different situations. You'll also start recognizing these words in real-life conversations, which makes it easier to understand people when they speak, even if you haven't actively studied those words.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to ask for help when you don't understand something. I know it can be intimidating, especially if you're not speaking the language much, but remember, the learning process involves asking questions. If you hear someone use a word or phrase you don't understand, ask them to explain it. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of curiosity and a desire to learn. And over time, your ability to understand will grow stronger and faster.
That's so true. Another great technique is reviewing material multiple times. This can be really powerful for reinforcing what you've learned. You know how when you watch a movie, you might not catch every detail the first time, but when you watch it again, you notice new things. The same principle applies to language learning. By going back to the same podcast, video, or text, you'll start to notice things you missed earlier. You'll pick up new vocabulary, and those little gaps in your understanding will slowly fill themselves in.
Exactly. And the great thing is that repetition isn't boring. It actually helps deepen your understanding and makes you more comfortable with the language. Think of it like building muscle. The more you work out your listening skills, the stronger they get. And soon, you'll be able to understand English with less effort.
Let's take a moment to talk about some common mistakes that people make when they're trying to understand English, but they're not speaking it regularly. One mistake I often see is thinking that you can't improve your comprehension without speaking. But that's just not true. Comprehension is like a muscle. You can develop it just by listening and reading.
Exactly. And another big mistake is focusing too much on perfect grammar or vocabulary. Well, yes, grammar and vocabulary are important, but they don't need to be perfect for you to understand what someone is saying. The goal of language is communication. You might not know every single word or grammar rule, but as long as you get the main message, that's what matters most.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, no one speaks perfectly all the time, even native speakers. Sometimes people make mistakes or use slang or informal expressions that might not follow grammar rules, but that doesn't stop them from communicating effectively. So don't stress over every mistake or misspoken word. Focus on the message, not the perfection of the grammar.
Right. And here's another common mistake, trying to understand everything at once. If you don't catch a word or a phrase, don't panic. It's okay. This happens to everyone. When you're in a conversation, focus on understanding the overall meaning. Even if you miss a couple of words, try to get the gist of what the person is saying. If you focus too much on every single word, you might lose track of the main idea. The small gaps in your understanding will fill in over time.
Exactly. And one more thing I see often is people trying to translate everything word for word from their native language into English. While it can be helpful in some cases, this approach doesn't always work. English has many idiomatic expressions and phrases that don't translate directly into other languages. For example, if you translated break a leg literally, it would make no sense. But if you understand that it means good luck, you're able to follow the conversation much better.
Yes, and it's not just about idioms. English is filled with phrasal verbs and expressions that don't follow the same structure as other languages. So trying to translate word for word might confuse you. The key is to understand the meaning behind the phrases rather than getting caught up in direct translations.
All right, so let's wrap things up. We've covered a lot today about how to understand English without speaking all the time. Whether it's listening to music, watching TV shows, reading books, or simply observing conversations around you, the key takeaway here is that improving your understanding doesn't require constant speaking. It's about using a combination of passive and active techniques to immerse yourself in the language.
And language learning is really a journey, isn't it? It's okay if you don't understand everything immediately. It's all about taking your time and gradually building up your skills. It's important to focus on understanding first. Speaking will come later. With patience and persistence, you'll start to notice that you understand more and more without even realizing it. It's all about consistency.
That's right, Sarah. And the great thing is, once you start feeling comfortable with your comprehension, you'll have a lot more confidence when it's time to speak. So even if you're not speaking English every day, just make sure to keep engaging with the language regularly. The more you listen and read, the more familiar it will become.
Absolutely. So to everyone listening, if you've been focusing on understanding and not speaking just yet, don't worry. You're still making incredible progress. Language is a skill, and just like any skill, it gets better the more you practice it, even if you're not actively speaking every day.
Exactly. So if you found this video helpful, make sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more language learning tips. We've got a lot more content coming your way. We'll see you in the next one.